Here's a real-world example of a drum mix before versus after that was done largely from using the technique I'm going to show in this video. Most amateur mixers know the power of referencing, but from what I've seen over the last 10 years of mentoring aspiring engineers is that most just don't do it. Or maybe you pull in a mix or two that you like, you just kind of sort of click back and forth hoping to magically hear the difference. Let me be real with you, that's not going to cut it. What you need is to take a magnifying glass to your favorite reference mixes by your favorite mixers so you can learn what goes into delivering a killer mix that jumps out of the speakers. Today we're continuing our critical listening series where, as promised, we're looking at the drums of the song Melancholy Kaleidoscope by the band All Time Low, which was mixed by one of my favorite music minds, Neil Averon. To learn as much as we can, I've created a guide called the Critical Listening Survey, and I've made it available for you absolutely free for a limited time. I'll put the link in the description so you can download the guide and follow along with me here today. Alright, so today we're talking drums. We're going to pull in Melancholy Kaleidoscope by the band All Time Low. As promised, we're going to dissect the drums that are happening in this song, but more importantly, I don't care if you mix hip-hop, pop, R&B, you're going to be able to see the process for trying to get in and study your favorite mixer's drums, be it beat production, 808s, what have you. I think this guide is going to be super helpful, so definitely check that link out in the description and you can follow along as we go. A couple bits of homework first. The way I'm using referencing, I'm using the plugin adapter. You could use Mastering the Mix Reference, another great option. Or if you don't have a plugin for it, you could just drag the file into your DAW. Just make sure that you have it routed to a place where today we're talking about throwing an EQ on and using filters and really trying to dive a little deeper into just a stereo wave file with your reference. You want to make sure that this EQ that we're going to use affects both your song and the reference so you can get an idea of what's happening. So with that being said, we're going to pull open the song. We got a section looped and we're going to open up our guide. Let's come over here. And the first thing that it talks about in the drum section, actually first, if you missed part one, go back and watch that. It's huge. Arrangement. We're going to talk about what makes a great arrangement, how the verse may die down and then create anticipation for that chorus to be bigger, what elements change from one chorus to another. All kinds of good stuff to learn from that. But today, again, we're talking drums. So first up, the question is kick drum fundamental frequency. What's the fundamental frequency? So if we click back over, there's a couple ways we can find that. Like I mentioned, you could, I'm going to use the Pro Q3, but whatever stock EQ probably could use as well. A lot of them have analyzers. Lots of great options out there. But the couple of things we want to do. In the settings of the Pro Q3, I want to go over here and I want to set, instead of this medium, I want to throw it to maximum. Now, I don't recommend mixing with these settings, but for this referencing trick is what I call it. This is where you really want the highest resolution possible from that spectrum analyzer, and that's going to give it to you. So down there, settings icon, maximum and very fast. And then the main thing that we're going to do is we're going to use filters. Talked about this in my low end trick video. You can see I'm already tightening up that filter and going down deep. Now, why did I do that? Well, if you start from scratch with the Pro Q or some stocky, like the stock Pro Tools, I don't even think it gives you past like 36 or something, dB per octave slope. What's a dB per octave slope? See, that says 12 dB per octave. Can go to 6 dB per octave, and what that is a more gentle slope. So if you've got it positioned at 600 hertz, you're still going to hear a little bit of 700, 800, 1K, 4K, whatever, and it's going to taper off. Well, if you tighten that slope, go to 12 dB per octave, it gets a little tighter, right? You're going to hear less of the stuff above the frequency. And if you go in a little more, 18, 24, 30, 36, 48. Some of you are going to be like, well, why don't you just do this and use this to listen to the different frequency ranges in adapter or referencing the mix? Because I don't like the slope limitation. You've got 48 dB per octave slope. I like it to be super tight, and you're about to hear why. So yes, it's a great option, great feature, but even so, I like the visual representation, not only for teaching, but for learning what's going on in the different frequency ranges throughout the full spectrum of sound. So 48, not tight enough for me. I like to go to 70, 72 or 96, depending upon, and sometimes I'm even at that brick wall, which when I'm listening for low-end energy, comparing my mix to a reference track, I want to hear where does the low-end energy enter the reference that I'm using. Is it 25 hertz, 30 hertz? Is it 40? Sometimes it's even higher, 40, 50, 60 hertz. Just depends on the song and the track. But a lot of times around 30 to 40 is pretty common, but you may hear 20, and it's good to know that and be able to go back and compare. So brick wall can be handy, but I like to use 72 most of the time, 96, it just depends. But okay, so fundamental frequency. I've got it noted here. It's around 55 to 60. Well, how did I find that? Let's come down here and let's just take everything out above 27 hertz, and let's see what we get here. Now I know that that's the chorus of the song. If I bypass it, we're rocking. So we got kick hitting, we've got bass pulsing, great energy from the track at this point. So I know that if I unbypass that and I'm listening 27 hertz or so, I've got a little bit of low end energy from the kick pulsing, but it's minuscule. So, and I've got a sub pack. It's not even registering that right now. So I'm going to open it up a little bit more. 30 hertz, we got a little bit more energy. Just keep opening her up. 45. We've got some good energy down there. It's nice and tight, but nothing's like really sticking out. It's not like punching us, right? So we're gonna just keep opening it up until we feel that. Okay, so now check this out. If I go back, let's say we go back to like 60, this kick is resonating around 55, 60 hertz, somewhere in there. If we go here, clearly we can hear that. Let's take the slope down to 6. Now you hear all the low mids, the guitars, all this stuff. I don't even need to hear any of that. We're just focusing on the kick drum. I want to see what's that kick doing. There's a couple things that I'm feeling. Number one, it's tight as crap, man. That kick is hitting and it's like a split second and it's gone. The low end energy, it punches, it moves the speakers, it does what it's supposed to do, and then it's out of the way and the bass kind of carries over. So we've got a very defined, very tight kick, clearly gated, transient shaping, whatever he's got going on there, but very much just a tight and in your face kind of kick drum. But again, we're trying to find the fundamental frequency. So what we would do here, this is one way to do it. Let's make sure my settings are on. They're on medium. I don't know how that changed. Oh, I set it back to the default. I was going to say, it was kind of like Humpty Dumpty over there with the frequency, the spectrum analyzer here. So now let's look. Yeah, now you got a way more defined. I mean, look at that thing right here. Okay, so I'm coming 60 hertz or so, 60, 65. We get quite a bit of energy. And like I said, it's tight, it's punchy, it gets in, gets out. Now, what the heck are we doing here? The reason why this is relevant, this is what I consider the absolute best technique to learn how to mix, is if you click over and you listen to the reference and you can see it's resonating 60 hertz or whatever, it's tight, it's punchy, that kick is hitting and it's gone. If you click over to your mix and yours is boom, boom, woofy and got way more sustain and it's, you got a problem. Let's address that problem, right? So now you know, okay, well, duh, we got to gate it. If you got a woofy subby kick, you got to tighten that joker up. Okay, now it's tight. What frequency is yours resonating at? Is it at maybe 40 hertz, maybe 70 hertz, maybe 100 hertz? But you're referencing, you really like that mix. The band, they want that sound. That, Neil Avron right here, whatever the reference is. It got some work to do. And so this is a great tip to be able to go and compare. I'm just trying to walk you through to show you how to do it so that you can then compare it with your mix and make greater progress. So here you can see the analyzer clearly pulsing at 60 hertz, and you can feel it and hear it if you've got a sub pack, if you got your monitors, and there you go. So just high cut with a tight filter, and you just take all the other stuff out of the equation, and you're going to really shine that magnifying glass on the low end to figure out what's going on. Now, another way, if you have the Pro Q3, you can come over here and click this icon. Nope, it's actually this one, this little purple thing here. And so when this is on and you hit play, you can hover. Let's put this back down to the low end. You can hover your mouse over the analyzer. It's going to turn colors. Turns purple. See that? And And then right there, you can clearly see, bam, what's that frequency? 60, 65 hertz. So you can see that energy for this kick is living right in that range. And with it set, again, maximum and very fast, all the more you're going to be able to identify that. So kick drum, check. Between 55 and 60, I put originally, I did it quick, but 60, 65 hertz. We got energy at 40 hertz. We have some energy at 70 hertz and 100 hertz, but the fundamental, the dominant kick frequency is absolutely in that 60 hertz range. Okay, how much bottom end sustain? We talked about that. It's nice and tight, which means that kick has either been choked, gated, or pre-processed, and it's just a great sounding sample. The dominant click frequency. Now we're getting into the top end. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to come over here, get rid of our high cut. We're going to put a low cut, high pass, tighten that Q, and we're going to come all the way up here, kind of in 600, 700 hertz, and we're going to start listening there. And I tell you what, I'm going to put a high cut as well to find this. And the reason why this is important is you might notice that if you've got a kick sample in, maybe you're mixing a pop punk song, but your background is metal. It could be cool to have that top end 7K, 10K, really, really up in the mix and bright for a pop punk song. It can work for sure, but maybe that's not what the band wants, and maybe that's not what you particularly want, but that's what the sample you've been given has got. So what? Let's just shape that sample. So then you come in here and just pull back 7, 10K, whatever, once you identify what's going on in your kick. And then you can come over here and boost maybe a little lower. You want to put it as like a little bit of 1K, a little bit of 4K, a little bit of 7K, and just kind of reshape the click and the kick, depending upon what you're going for. So that's why this is relevant. I don't want to get rid of all those. Let's get rid of just those 3 there. And to kind of hone in on what's going on there, let's just get rid of the stuff we don't need. There's no click in the kick, the top end, the actual smack that you hear below 600 hertz or so. And even then, that's kind of, it's more going to be like, is it 1K, 2K, 3K, all the way up to like 10K. Any number of them, boost it a little bit or one a lot, just depends on the style of the kick. But to be able to hear that, what we're going to do is use these filters. I don't hear any kick between 687 and 1452. So we know we can go all the way up here to 1452 and start opening up. I hear snare, but I don't hear kick, so we're just going to open up. And it can be painful to listen to, but... So I hear a little bit of kick, but still nothing much, and we're all the way up at like 3,600 cycles, so... 4K. So it enters around 4K. Let's see what I wrote down over here. Enters around 4K. You think I'd plan this? It's been a couple weeks, I think, since I filled this out, but enters around 4K, but it's dominant around 6 to 8, I say. So let's come up here and listen to 6 to 8K. I know this is piercing. It could be painful. Maybe keep the volume low for this example, but it's super helpful. There you go. That kick, 6K, is starting to really come through. Even up to 10K. So you've got some entering around 4K, certainly there, but 6 to 10K is really where this kick is coming through. So there we go. Long-winded way of showing you how to figure that out. And for years, it drove me crazy. Where is my, I hate 3 to 5K, that 4K thing. But the kick drum often need a little bit of that to help it cut through and sound modern. So moving on, number 4, any audible room sound to the kick, or is it dry and direct? Why is that important? Well, how many times have you gone and spent time trying to figure out different kick samples to blend in or kick tone, only to hear that the reference track has got none? It's just a dry, direct, in-your-face sample. In this case, this song, I think that's pretty much the case. Your head right, melancholy kaleidoscope, it's all right. And what you can do is, for some songs, you can go find like a more chill section. So I just grit my teeth and sing along. This choir, the coldest hearts, I go in the heart. That's dry as all get out. So there we go. What did I write? Not audible, dry, tight, and in your face. But that could be cool to know. You hear a little bit of room sound, like, let's find a little bit of room sound for a kick drum sample. All right, snare drum. Moving through this. Fundamental frequency for the snare. This is a good one. You may find that snare's got a little more chunk than yours. Well, where do you get it? In the fundamental. And so let's go maximum very fast. We got what we need there. Let me go ahead and turn this off. And let's hear that snare. A little more gas to burn and we can fast cut now. I want you to pay attention right in here. Snare fundamental usually is going to live anywhere from a pretty average 200 hertz to 400 hertz or so, depends upon the tuning and all that. But often deep stuff, I mix a lot of like CCM, contemporary Christian, live worship. We get those deep snares that tune crazy low, as low as you can go and then lower. And you can have fundamental resonating around 100, 150 hertz. You get multiple like kind of blended samples. You could have a fundamental at 100, 150, 200, real deep chunky snare. But for this one, it looks like it's somewhere around this 250 range. And you can just see it coming out. You shake things up and get the picture in your head right. So there we go. You can hear the kick. The snare fundamental. Now, just like we talked about, if you wanted to get a little bit of that magnifying glass going, just kind of zone in on 100 hertz to put those pretty tight. Yeah, let's get them tighter. There we go. Let's go to a section with some snare. You can see it. You set it to maximum and very fast. You're going to see that popping out. So 200 hertz for this one. What did I say? 200 hertz. And we're moving on. Why is that important? Well, if you, maybe you're like me and you like a chunky snare. I love a fat snare. I like a lot of fundamental in my snare drums. I get out of hand. I get it to where it's just too fat. It's too in your face, and it's taking over the song. Sometimes that's cool. You want that. Other times you want it to be well balanced, or maybe you want a little thinner snare sound, depending upon your mix. And you're gonna be able to hear that, and then click back over to your mix, and you're gonna hear, okay, that snare way more chunky than mine, or I'm not chunky enough, or whatever's happening. Cool way to look at it. So get those filters working for you. What frequency is the dominant crack or pop sound? This one's a little harder, but it's just similar to the kick drum. We're going to go up there and you'll do the same thing. You'll listen kind of around the 1K range, 2K, 3K, 7K. It just depends, 8K, what's happening, where the snare is tuned, and how the mixer has got that. Listen to some maybe kind of in here like... So we certainly got some between 500 and 1K. A little more around 2K. Let's back up. So we've got several frequency ranges. We have the fundamentals, pretty good. 1K has got some energy. 2K, 4K. I would say maybe there's a little bit of a boost around 7 or 8K, the snappiness kind of thing. But it's got quite a bit of 1K, 1K, 2K happening here as well. So anyways, just a cool way to kind of look at that. How much sustain does a snare top mic have? Just like the kick drum, what is it doing? Is there a big room decay happening? Let's put this up, put this out here. I don't need to hear the bottom end to hear the snare to see it. Just picturing that magnifying glass. Go in the house. So give a little more gas to burn, and we can fast cut now to the curtain call. There's certainly a room tone to it, but it's faint. Mostly we've got that tight, punchy snare drum. It hits, it's pretty dry in your face, but it does have a little bit of decay, kind of 500 millisecond, maybe a 1 second room, just kind of resonating a little bit just so it's not bone dry, but pretty tight, pretty punchy. Hopefully this is helping you just kind of think about that. Any audible room sound, it's clean and dry, so that it sits on top with little to no audible room tone. How loud is the snare? How in your face is it sitting back in the mix? For this one, I said it's slightly louder than the vocal, maybe even just kind of right there with the vocal. I dig that. I love a loud kick, snare. Depends on the mix, the motion of the song, all that. But I love a tight, punchy drum kit that just smacks you in the face when it's appropriate. So let's listen to the level of the snare drum. Am I right? It's crazy loud. Here, let's pull in another song or two. What do we got as options here? Broken Things. Different loudness levels, but Melancholy Kaleidoscope is way louder. Broken Things is still pretty loud. Let's check out this song, Beautiful. Another song where the snare is a pretty dominant sound of the song. Let's hear this from Francesca Battistelli. Let's go back. In the verse, we got a more chill kind of snap clap thing happening. Chorus comes in, you got that deep snare thing happening. Pretty cool tone, and it's fairly loud, so you can hear from section to section. So good thing to keep an eye on is how loud is the snare drum. Moving on, let's talk about these toms. So what I like to do is find, similar to how I'll DS a vocal, we'll go find a section with toms, and then we're going to listen to it. So for this, we'll throw the filters. Whoop, I don't need that. We're going to put the filters back down, turn them off, get rid of this guy, leave that one. Yeah, we'll turn it off. And then let's go find some tom fills. I think there's a tom fill at the end of the chorus. There you go. So we'll go loop that section, hit it. Okay, something I noticed very interesting about Neil's toms here, whether they were real, live, or heavily edited live, or replaced, they've got a very, very defined fundamental. So incredibly, I mean, there's a reason why I said Neil Averon, musical genius, incredible music mind, and not just mixer, because he's an engineer, producer, he's all over this, right? Playing on records, writing, all that good stuff. And very likely tuning these drums. I don't know, maybe he's got a drum tech, but very likely he's tuning these drums. And the note that's resonating is so well defined, man. Like it hits, and it's just that note. What I mean by that, similar to what we talked about with the fundamental in the kick or the snare, fundamental in the toms. The rack toms all have their own note, very well defined in this. Take a listen. I'm gonna we'll pull out like 300 hertz and above or so. And we'll take out the bottom end, super bottom end. We don't need that. These toms are also not resonating super deep. And that's not really a good section. I don't want to waste your time finding it, but what I found in doing this was, again, the rack tom 2, the floor tom, they all had a very defined fundamental, one note that was kind of ringing out. They didn't have a whole bunch of stuff above and below that frequency. So oftentimes what we get with kind of average recordings, I talk about all the time, the average and poor recordings, you get these toms that just kind of, I don't know any other way to say that. They just have frequencies all over the low end. They're not well tuned, and top head, bottom head are creating dissonance. And so often the best solution is just replace it. I hate replacing toms. I hate blending toms. I just want good tom recordings, but that doesn't happen all the time. Now, you can take average tom recordings, kind of suck out the bottom, suck out the top, and kind of get away with it, especially on songs that they don't play that often. I mix a lot of gospel. There's a lot of toms in a lot of gospel songs. And so it's very important to either do the tom trick, we'll link to that in another video, but to isolate those toms and to clean them up. In this case, we've got incredibly well-mixed toms. The other thing is the note. Next question, I think, how long do they sustain for? They hit and they're gone. There's not any of this doom, doom, rack tom 1 and 2 are hitting on top of each other and creating a chord, or there's none of that. It hits, they hit, they're gone. Very much like the snare and the kick, very tight, very punchy. Let's do this. Let's find another section with some tom fills. Choking back my feelings. Only giving 95. That's the one I wanted. That's the tom fill we want to analyze. Let's go select that real quick. And 95. That's the one. Now let's look at this frequency analyzer. Look at that. Perfect example. It goes right down the notes. Boom. From right here around 200 hertz for the rack tom. Right here for either floor tom 1 or whatever, 140. And then what do we got on the floor? Down here a little deeper, around 84, 85 hertz or so. So you can clearly hear those. Go find you the toms in your song, loop that section like that, and tell me what you hear. It's probably going to be a low-end mess. So we'll look at another video how to clean that up, but something to take note of. You maybe don't need 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hertz in your toms. Maybe you can high pass them, maybe a little more gentle of a high pass, but maybe you can high pass them to clean them up just above where the kick fundamental is so that they don't resonate on top of your kick drum. A big problem, and something I get myself into trouble all the time with it, because I do like the end floor tom. I like that to have a little more of a decay. So I'll move a floor tom to another track. So I'll have two of the same floor tom, and any of the ones that I want to have more decay, I'll mix them differently. I'll either set the gate more open, or I'll have the sample to have a little more sustain and release for that particular hit, so it kind of carries on. Do that all the time. And so you could do that with your standard toms bus. Maybe you have them high pass like 60 or 70 hertz just above the kick drum, but then maybe you have another set of tracks where when you want them to have that low end, but what I do is I often mix and allow that tom, that floor tom or whatever, to have that low end at the end of a fill, but then maybe there's a kick that comes in while that tom's resonating, and I end up having to sidechain, push the toms down with the kick, or vice versa if I want the toms to extend. Getting a little fancy on you, but at least you'll be able to hear it. So you click over, you listen to the reference, and you're going to hear that now. Take those filters, and you can get in there, get out. So stick hitting the head, what frequency? I had this around 1.4, 3.4, same exact process for the click and the kick, so we won't show that again. And then again, just to know, how much room sound do you hear? Do you hear that non-lin 80s verb kind of thing? Do you hear room sound? Do you hear a hall? Is it drum room tone? I hate using verbs when I can get away with it. I like to use more like room tones. You got so many incredible samples out there. Often for snares, I'll only blend. I'll take the live snare that I'm mixing and use a sample, but only use room sound samples and blend that in to give it the feel it was recorded at Blackbird, the Slate Blackbird bundle and stuff like that. But okay, overhead mics. How bright? I said here, let's read this. So it can be hard to distinguish exactly what the overheads are giving us in a stereo mixer reference, but there are still a few things we can reverse engineer from them, which is what this is all about, is reverse engineering our favorite mixes. How bright are the cymbals? Is there lots of air up top, warmer, maybe not as top end heavy? For this particular track, I said that it sounds like one-shot samples. It sounds like cymbal samples have been blended in and placed left or right, or maybe they recorded the kit with the shells one take and then the cymbals on another, so they could do that. Super common, especially with the modern sound. You want a really clean recording. You don't want a bunch of cymbal bleed in your toms or your kick and snare mics. Totally possible. Sounds like one-shot samples, I said, and they're fairly bright, not warm, no lows or low mids. So if they use the overheads, they used them as cymbal mics, is what I'm hearing. And all the more when you're using kick and snare samples or even tom samples, if you want to use a lot of the overheads, often you kind of get this, it's a play back and forth. Like, what kind of sound do you want? Do you want the dry, direct sound? You're probably going to be better off just pulling in some left and right cymbal samples, using the overheads as cymbal mics. Otherwise, the low end, the mid-range, all of that is going to create, the louder you put that in the mix, the more it's going to overtake your samples or impact your samples. So if you do use the overheads as, and it depends, there's no right or wrong. If you want to use them as cymbal mics, you're going to high pass pretty aggressively, or you could do like a gentle high pass and then use bells to kind of shape it, get the mid-range out of there. It's all just trial and error, messing with it. But this one in particular certainly sounds like they've used samples and taken the overheads and made them cymbal mics. And that's at least what we're hearing from it now. So how wide are the cymbals panned? This is a good one. Look for a section where the left and then a right crash combo to get a feel for how wide the overheads have been panned. You'll find overheads panned anywhere from hard left and right, so all the way out, all the way into just a mono. So what's going on here? I said they're pretty wide. Some hits hard left and right, while others are just inside. So pretty good visual of the kit. Some cymbals, you know, are in a little bit more. But let's take a listen. Let's go out. Let's turn this off. In 95, in 95. And let's take our loop out of there. So we had a that left. All you hear it is in the left side for that one right there. Let's move forward. And the other reason why I feel like there's cymbal samples is because when the main groove is playing in the verse, you get the hi-hat. For here, you have the crash ride happening. Crash ride would be pretty loud in the overhead mics. For that cymbal to come in and be as loud as it is, that much louder than a crash ride, that drummer is either barely hitting that crash ride and then hitting the cymbal pretty good, like he's balancing the kit, or we got samples going on. It's just something to take note of, that maybe to listen out for. How's the balance between the ride, the open hat maybe, and those crash mics? So moving on from the overhead mics, bass and low end, that's for another video. So I hope you guys are digging this, man. Drop comments below. Let me know if you have any questions, anything you want to see. I do have a course taking this critical listening, these skills, and I've done multiple songs, R&B, hip hop, pop, you name it. Taking a look at some soundtrack stuff that some customers requested, and it's all in the critical listening workshop. I'll put that link in the description. But if right now, if you want to see another video where I'm going to break down, remember we talked about that arrangement, looking at what the best mixers are doing, how the producers are arranging the song, and then maybe even the mixers are affecting that arrangement, click over here and I'm going to show you exactly how to do just that. I'll see you over there.